Okay.
Let's have a call to order and roll call. We now have a quorum present. So meeting is called to order at 5:02 p.m. according to my computer. I will therefore call roll. John Fresca.
Here.
Becky Kimball. Linda McIntyre here. Welcome. Scott Walker.
I'm here, of course.
And Debbie Young here. We have
more.
4 absences, so we needed all of us to have quorum. And as I said to Kelly, I'm suspicious that there is an engineers conference somewhere because we're missing our 3 engineer members of this board. So anyway, we have a quorum. Let us begin. Public comment. Does any member of the public wish to give public comment?
Under the
What am I
first
missing?
item is the tag member introduction.
I'm sorry, it's right there. Yes, we have a new tag member. Her name is Linda McIntyre, and I would like her to introduce herself and tell us why she's here.
Hello, everybody. I'm really pleased to be joining all of you in the Transit Advisory Groups. As David said, I'm Linda McIntyre, relatively new Port Townsend resident. So I've been riding transit buses, and I got to know Nicole as part of my work with Main Street and talking about issues about possibilities for car-free travel for people visiting the town. Something really important to me. Part of what I'm interested in with transit is how to link transit and recreational economic development opportunities. And I work for the National Park Service as a project manager and transportation planner. So I have about 20 years of experience in that and various transit projects too. So looking forward to working with all of you.
And we're looking forward to working with you. Thank you very much for joining. Okay.
Should we have everyone go around?
And introduce ourselves? That's probably a good idea. And I would just like to mention that I did not call roll for Dave Nakagawara, who is excused absent, Jeff Kosteka, who is excused absent, Brandon Maxwell. I'm drawing blank. Brandon Maxwell, who is excused absence, and Tim Caldwell, who is an excused absence. So, okay, we will introduce ourselves. Debbie Yankee, who can't follow an agenda. I'm chair. Thank you.
I'm Becky Campbell. I'm interested in active transportation and anything that gets people out of their cars.
Yes. You know Nicole. Okay. You know Kelly.
I do know.
Okay. Savannah.
I'm not the first name.
Right. Okay.
I'm Miranda. Miranda's finance manager.
Yes.
And
Up on the board, would you like to introduce yourself to our new tag member? Start with John Nowak.
Hi, I'm John Nowak. I'm a member of the Transit Authority Board, and we recently decided that the vice president of the board would be the TAG board rep. So that's why I'm here. Nice to meet you.
Thank you. John Fresca.
Hello, I'm John Fresca. I have been a resident of Port Townsend for 11 years now, a resident of Western Washington most of my life. And I am in a wheelchair, so I regularly use the dial-a-ride service and also the fix-a-route buses. So that's my means of transportation, and I've been glad to be a member of the Transit Advisory Group.
Thank you. Scott, introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, I'm Scott Walker. I want to back up just a second. John Nowak used to be on the Transit Advisory Board
Yes.
before he moved uphill.
And you, go ahead.
Okay, I'm Scott Walker. I've lived in Port Townsend 45 years, and I've been an advocate for people to get on their feet, on their bikes, and on transit. For much of that time, I've been on the Transit Advisory Board. This iteration for several years, and one before that for probably 10 or 11 years. Yeah, that's enough information.
Thank you. You've already introduced yourself, Miranda? Yes. Okay. And Jamie, would you quick introduce yourself, please, to our new member?
Yes, absolutely. My name is Jamie Brook, and I am the Grants and Procurement Coordinator for Jefferson Transit for the past 5 years.
Thank you. Does that cover it? Yeah, you move on here. Okay,
Nice to meet everyone.
We will now move on to public comment. And do we have any members of the public online, so I don't need to ask them to raise their hands because there's no members of the public and there's none here either. So we will move past that, other than I would like to make a very quick, I guess it's a public comment. Brenda McMillan was a staunch advocate for transit for years. She served as a bus buddy to teach people how to use transit, and by serving on various iterations of this group. She died about a week ago at the age of 90. And there will be a service held at the Friends Meeting House on July 23rd. She was a very robust transit advocate, so I just wanted you all to know. Thank you. We will now move on to the consent agenda. And it contains the minutes for the prior meeting. Do we have any changes or corrections to the minutes? Or can we go to approve the minutes? Anybody have any changes to the minutes? I'm not seeing any. Can we have a motion to approve the minutes?
Move to approve.
Oh,
Second, okay, all in
I'll
favor? Okay, thank you. John Fresca, second, Scott moves. All in favor, aye.
aye.
Unanimous approval of the consent agenda. We now have a JTA board update, and I think John Nowak has been blessed with that responsibility.
Oh, boy. Not too much new going on at the board level. I think you guys are reviewing the transit plan, development plan today, which is obviously a big task of ours. There's been some discussion at the board level because we've performed very well on sales tax this year and have some more income than we anticipated. And I think we're all starting to think about and look at what are the opportunities for enhancing service for our users and how to do that. But also within that are very aware that the leadership already has a pretty full agenda for this year. And so I think we have to be really careful about adding items to their list. And then there's a number of projects I think you guys know that are going on, the third maintenance bay, the work actually in the room that you're in is something that we're working on, and some redoing of phone and computer stuff in the office. So I think those are kind of the main things. Nicole, feel free to add anything that I've left out.
So I think a few things that might be of interest to the TAG group is at the board meeting, we did ask for a budget adjustment for the capital budget because we had 3 projects. So one, which John just alluded to, which is upgrading the boardroom and our capacity to hold really effective meetings. So that was one. Another one was, oh my gosh, I'm blanking.
Oh, do you put me on the spot?
Another one was
It isn't just me.
yeah, so the
There we go.
Discovery Trail,
Yes.
we have been working with the county on some of our easements and the construction of the Discovery Trail, both on 63 Four Corners and 111 Four Corners. We're really excited about that. We when this property was built, we had signed an easement with the county. We have updated that easement because we needed to change the trail a bit. But the county now will be constructing and maintaining that trail on both pieces of property. We will, however, just be paying for it, which is nice because we are in the business of moving people and not constructing trails.
Right.
So we're really excited about that project. I think when we start to think about attracting more people to transit, having that trail right here is going to be really key.
The third one was the bulb out.
Oh, yes, and that one is just as exciting. So the last one is, we have been working with Dash, and I say we, I mean Jefferson Transit staff, has been working with Dash and the city on an enhanced stop on our number 11 route, and moving that stop closer to Aldridge's. So I think we had discussed now that our current stop, there's a pretty steep incline from where our transit stop is to Aldridge's. So we've been working with the city. The city went out for a grant to help pay for a new transit stop. We were not successful in getting that grant, but we did ask the board for funding to have the city build out that transit stop for us. The city's in the midst of, or will be in the midst of, their project for repaving Lawrence Street and doing work on Tyler, so this felt like a really good time to do that. So we're really excited about, having the funding set aside for that transit build out, making that a little bit easier for all riders who are, heading to the farmers market, to Aldridge's, to any of the businesses in Uptown. So I think that will be a really great enhancement. I'm just scanning through the agenda from the last board meeting. We did sign a contract with Left Turn, Right Turn Consulting Group, and they will be doing our comprehensive operational analysis. We had our kickoff meeting today, but it was really key that we get that contract signed. So that will be about a year-long project. So we're really excited to get started on that.
That it?
That's it.
That's
a lot.
Great for the stop at Alderdies,
Yeah.
because the city is working on, has grants for both Tyler and Lawrence.
Right.
Yeah.
At that intersection, so that's perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for the update. Okay, we will then, I will check that one off. We are now up to new agenda items. Do any TAG members have a new item to add to the agenda for this meeting? Scott is
do.
raising his finger. Yes, Scott.
Just an idea I want to throw out there for us to consider and for the board to also consider.
Listening. Where do you want, you want it, where do you want it? Under new business? Or
If
you
you
just want-
want- anywhere you want. Yeah, it's not even business at this point. It's, if I was a member of the public instead of on the committee, I would have put it as a public comment, but
What do I do with this? Do I?
But if it's a discussion item, you can put it on as new business, just a discussion item.
Okay,
What's the topic of it?
yeah, a topic would be nice.
other uses of transit properties.
Other uses. Okay. We will put you at the end of new business. Thank you.
Okay.
Other uses, thank you. Okay. Any other new agenda items? No, okay. Unfinished business, first thing on there is public outreach update, and that is on page 33 of the packet for anybody who's looking in the packet. And I believe you're going to give us that?
Yes, I'll just give a brief update. So I've been tracking our social media following just to show that it's growing. We're getting more followers on all of our platforms, which is great. We're not getting huge jumps in numbers, but we are getting some. It seems like when we do the paid ad,
right
that's when we get a lot more followers in a shorter amount of time, but we are getting followers, which is good. I'm also tracking the QR code scans. So we have flyers in all the shelters and the buses with QR codes for our website, how to sign up for rider alerts, and all of our social media platforms. And that is growing as well. So that's good. People are seeing our flyers and using them. At the last meeting, the TAG group asked me to start tracking rider alert subscribers. Right now through our program, we cannot differentiate between service alerts and people that are signed up for public meetings. It's just whoever signed up in all. So right now that's all I'm tracking. So I just have the first ones, but we did a paid ad for that as well. And we got a big jump in subscribers. So that's on the rise as well. And then we'll be able to compare that in the next meeting. We just recently did a ad in the PD Leader. They have this map brochure. It's like a special insert that they do. It's different than the Leader, and it's placed around, I think, on the ferries, and I'm not sure exactly where else, but it has a big area where people can get to it. So we decided to promote the shuttle on this in our ads. We did a cute little ad for that. And then we also worked on preparing and submitting the wooden boat ad, which will come out in the Northwest Maritime Center magazine. So like that. And then a couple tabling events. We tabled at the Discovery Road ribbon cutting. Nicole was there and Deb was there. And
I was standing between two transportation tables, one for the city and one for transit. It was great.
very nice. That was a great event because we have 2 new bus shelters on that.
Three
Three new bus
Three new
shelters.
bus shelters.
And some of our board members rode the bus to the event, so that was great. We have upcoming events. The Farmers Market Fort Townsend is in July 20th. Jefferson County Fair, August 9th to 10th. I don't know if we're for sure for the All County Picnic. I think we've talked about it, so I just put it on there as a possibility. And then Wooden Boat, September 6th through 8th, and then the Quilting Fair, September 21st. So we'll be reaching out for you for schedules as more come along, but we do already have people set for the Fort Townsend Farmers Market. Great.
I think with the all county picnic, they were waiting to see if if they had room for us.
Okay.
So.
Maybe August 18th, we still have time to reach out if we need to.
And then the last page, I just like to show little screenshots of some of the social media posts that we do. Just to show you what we're doing. Some of them get little engagement, some of them get a lot of engagement. We've been collaborating with other agencies and sharing their posts for different items. So we shared stuff from the county, from the city, and from Washington State Ferries. We have more recruitment ads on there. We posted about our climate action plan survey, and we were looking for students for our focus group. So if you ever want to share our posts, if you guys have social media, that helps get the word out there. And if you ever have any ideas for social media posts, you can send them my way.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Kelly about the outreach, social media and all of that, the public outreach? Any questions? No, great, thank you very much. Yeah, very good work. Well done. Tag member bus riding report out. Does anybody want to report on their riding of the bus? No?
That I didn't.
Okay. Well, I would say that several of us rode the bus for the Discovery Road ribbon cutting, and that was really fun. There were 2 tables, like I said, there were 2 tables set up for transportation. I could just stand between them, and it was wonderful. It was for one was for the transportation element, I think, for the city's comp plan update. I have a question here, if I could ask. It's sort of transit related for getting people on the bus. I'm a part of a grant-funded effort to add tree canopy to 2 of our parks. It involves significant effort to engage high school students who we need to figure out a way. I was asked if we could figure out a way to get a group of high school students from the high school to Bishop Park, because that's where they're going to be doing their surveys for canopy. And I looked at the schedules and the maps and I can't figure it out. I don't know, is this something we could do in the future when we get to microtransit? Is there a way to help them figure out how to transport a group of students from the high school to the Bishop Park area? And we don't necessarily have to do this right now, but I just wanted to ask the question because it was someone who wanted outreach from transit to figure out how to transport students. And I would love if we could figure out a way to accommodate that. And
I
then
can answer this question.
I'm listening.
Well, kind of before you launch into charter, it is on the number 11 route. I mean, it's
Yeah,
like
it's right
a block and a half away from the number 11 route.
Yeah, because I tried the little thing on the webpage, and I guess I'm just no good at it. I ended up with this really circuitous 45-minute route.
They can always call customer service and we can route plan for them.
Ah,
But I
okay.
mean, if we're checking Port Townsend High School, they can board the number 11, get down to Haynes Place, and then board
Either Castle Hill or
a 3 or a 4,
3
or
or
any of the out of town routes, which will run straight up Sims. So I don't know that we, I would love to see, I'm not sure where microtransit is gonna take us or on-demand transit is gonna take us. We're just starting that
It
process.
sounds like we can do this now, though, with the
But-
service that we have.
Yeah, but there is a stopover at Haynes Place, but I think folks should get comfortable with just a brief stopover, and that is fairly normal for transit, but yeah, it's, if I'm thinking of I Googled it, had to Google Bishop Park, but yeah, I think it's right on the right on Sims.
Well, it is the one end of Bishop Park. There's the other end is up at 9th, but I don't think there's any way to get them to that end. So they can enter down at the off Sims.
Well, I mean, we can get pretty close.
Yeah.
If they're on Hancock, close to 9th, then they can just walk up 9th.
I'd like to help
Yeah,
them figure out
we
how to do it, because
definitely-
these are the people we want on the
Yeah,
bus.
definitely
Next
have
generation.
them
Yeah.
call us.
Just
you know,
call the front desk.
Savannah.
Okay, call
someone
Savannah.
On Friday.
Is,
Okay.
yeah.
It might also be a great mapping exercise opportunity for a class. And that's a great geography interface, is to take a map of the town and figure out how to, map routes, bike routes, trails and other things. It's a great opportunity to bring all those multiple modes together. So if the class would be willing to do that, it might be it might make an interesting opportunity and a learning.
It's a great idea. That'd be,
That-
that's something to propose to the Students for Sustainability.
Right. And this is a group in the environmental sciences class, and they're mapping canopy. We got a grant to improve canopy in Seder Park, which they can walk to, and Bishop Park, which is a little far. And so if we can figure out a way to get them to learn about transit and be able to get on the bus. I think-
Are they doing this during their class?
Yes,
So there might be a little time restriction then.
Yeah.
that I don't know, but I don't know if they take days, take it a separate day to do these exercises. Because you can't go into a park and map the park in an hour.
Right.
It's a day's exercise. So I will share that with
Yeah.
the teacher. She is currently climbing trees in Honduras, so I don't think I'll be able to talk to her for a few weeks, but okay. The other question,
Comment
Oh,
real
go
quick,
ahead.
too, just to explain to Linda, the tag member bus ride report out, it was part of the work plan for tag to every month. Between meetings, they should ride the bus at least once and then let us know their experience at the ride and where they rode and everything, and then give the feedback at the next meeting.
and I didn't write on that one, but I thought it was an important question to ask. Does anyone in Zoom land wish to report out on bus riding? Scott or John?
I'll just do a quick comment. Ben Thomas and I have been riding the bus to finance committee and board meetings, just as kind of a opportunity to do that. I think Kate Dean also joined us for the last general board meeting, and generally having good experiences. It's nice to have an opportunity to talk to the drivers and kind of navigate the system and learn a little bit about it. So I think that's been a good precedent. I think we'll probably continue to try to do that when we attend in person.
Great, thank you. John Frasca or Scott Walker, either of you?
Okay, I had a good experience with Dial-A-Ride today. I used it to get to one of my medical appointments and get home. And then back in May, Dial-A-Ride took me out to the Valley View Forest. I've been working with the Land Trust on making the trail that they're building out there wheelchair accessible. And I successfully rode my wheelchair from the parking area down to the new pavilion that they built. That was a good experience.
Great.
I'm also still planning on doing a test run using the Kingston bus and the fast ferry to get to Seattle. I have an appointment in Seattle coming up in September, so I want to do a test run prior to that. And then I'm also planning to get back into the habit of using the number 11 to go to the co-op post COVID. I just want to get back in the habit of shopping in person rather than online. So, but that's it for me for right now.
Thank you, John. Any Scott, you have anything to add?
I've been bad.
Well, we know that.
I have not walked, ridden by bicycle, or taken the bus much in the last month?
You haven't walked in the house?
No, I heard he.
Oh, okay, never mind. Okay, anything else? I think
Is it in
I
June?
think we're done. Okay, we're going to move on then, if we can. That was our write out report. We're gonna move on to the website project update. There was nothing in the packet, so I think this is a verbal update.
Yes, so we are making great progress on this project. I'm working with the website working group and staff, and the last thing we did was approve the layout and the color palette, and I sent a link to the website working group so they could see the skeleton layout. It just kind of lists what it's gonna look like in line art, so that you can see everything that's gonna be on the page, like the main picture, the graphic buttons, the widget carousel, the news, the calendar, so it shows that, and then it had a color palette of the colors that we want to use. And the next big thing we're doing right now is updating our current content and adding new pages, and then Civic Plus is going to migrate all of that content over. And then in September, they will have a reveal meeting for us, and that's when we will probably be reaching out to TAG and board to look at the website and give us feedback on all of the pages and the content and everything. And then our go live date is October 31st. So it's more information to come on that as we
Halloween?
progress. I think it's the 31st or the 30th. It's
Cool.
the end of October.
Great.
So,
That seems like a lot of work in a short amount of time, really.
Yes.
You guys, that's
They
really.
pedal fast out here.
Yeah.
it is a lot of work, but we're very excited about the
Yeah.
end product.
Any
Kelly
questions?
has been really just knee deep in cleaning
Website.
up the website, taking off information that really doesn't belong on it, and trying to get it to a point where when Civic Plus takes over the information that it's.
You want what's there to track to migrate.
So she's been doing a really great job, so
Okay.
yeah, our next big deadline, or Kelly's next big deadline is next Friday, so she's scrambling to get all that done.
Thank you. Any questions for Kelly about the website update? Looks like we're good. Okay, we're going to move on to, sorry, I'm in the wrong thing here again. We moving on now to new business, and we're going to have a climate action plan update. With, is Peak Sustainability going to present? or are we going to? Okay.
So they are moving over, and I have let them know that you guys are really excited about the update, so a big welcome to Kat from Peak Sustainability. She's gonna kind of just give an update as to where we are, what we've done, and where we are, and maybe some next steps, and then she'll be available for answering any questions that you may have.
Thank you
So
very
I'll
much.
turn it over to you, Kat.
And I would just like to quickly mention it is in the packet, starting on page 37 for anybody who's using their packet. Welcome and thank you. Go ahead.
Hello, thanks for the intro, Nicole. Can everyone hear me all right?
Yes.
Great. Okay. Going to share my slides as well. Okay. Set up here. Okay. All right, well, thank you all for having me today. I know Nicole has mentioned that you all were really excited about receiving this update on the climate action plan, which made me excited because it's more fun to talk to folks who are passionate about the work that they're doing. So just to quickly do an introduction, I'm Kat Klass. I'm one of the consultants from Peak working on this project. We're based in Bellingham, and we offer climate and sustainability planning services, facilitation, and community engagement for communities and organizations throughout the state of Washington. So we're the firm that's managing the project, but on the team, we also have Shoe Design. They're our graphic designers, and John Jantz of Gradient Exergy. He is our transportation decarbonization expert. And I always have to try not to stumble on the phrase transportation decarbonization. So today I'm aiming for about 10 minutes of project updates, which will include the contents of the climate action plan, the process and the timeline, the results of the greenhouse gas inventory, and a quick peek into some of the community survey results. And of course, I'll leave room for any questions you might have. And I have a few questions for all of you as well about your priorities for the climate action plan. Okay, so just to give kind of a high level overview of what will be in the climate action plan, we'll have the results of the greenhouse gas inventory that we did using data from 2022. We'll set an emissions, JTA will set an emissions reduction target, which is to be determined. We haven't quite launched into conversations about that yet. And then we'll have a section about greenhouse gas reductions, goals, strategies, and actions, which will be split into two sections. We'll have one that addresses JTA's operational emissions, so the emissions that JTA kind of has more direct control over. And then another section on how JTA can contribute to reducing those community-wide transportation emissions, which we've heard quite a bit about as we've talked to the board and other stakeholders that are really passionate about getting more folks on the bus. That section will also include some evaluation criteria and look at any co-benefits that might result from specific actions, like obviously converting to electric buses is better for air quality and things like that. We'll also have a climate change impact summary in the plan. So that will look at the predicted trends for climate hazards like extreme heat, wildfire and smoke, flooding, sea level rise, and how these hazards might affect JTA's operations and assets and staff. The section after that will be focused on resilience building, goals, strategies, and actions. So you can kind of think of the plan as being split into two parts. We have our greenhouse gas reduction piece and our resilience building piece. And again, that resilience building piece is divided into JTA's resilience and how JTA can contribute to community resilience to climate impacts. Again, those goals, strategies, and actions will have evaluation criteria and any co-benefits listed as well. And then the last section to wrap it up will be about implementation section. So there will be some monitoring metrics for the actions that can be measured, section on reporting, and a discussion of JTA updating the climate action plan and how frequently that happens. Okay, the next piece of this is the process, I guess the timeline and what we've accomplished so far on the project. So the bottom half of the slide is the public engagement timeline, and then the upper half covers written deliverables. So in terms of written deliverables, the greenhouse gas inventory, the climate impact summary, and then the summary of climate efforts and opportunities. Those have all been completed. And then on the bottom half of the page, the community survey has been completed as well. And Nicole has mentioned that I owe a big thank you to the Transit Advisory Group for your work promoting the survey to the Jefferson County community. As a quick update, we received 143 completed surveys and 38 partially completed surveys that had usable responses. So I'll give more information about those, some of the questions that we had there and the results in future slides, but just wanted to let you know the results of your efforts pushing that survey out to the community. Moving to the right on that bottom half of the timeline, we also have been working on quite a few interviews and focused meetings. So we've been having some preliminary conversations with JTA staff and representatives from JPUD about fleet electrification. And in the next few weeks, our transportation specialist is also planning on having some more follow-up meetings with specific groups of JTA staff to continue exploring questions about fleet electrification and thinking about what information is still needed in order to make that successful. We're also working on scheduling calls with representatives from DASH, Disability Awareness Starts Here, and OLICAP. And we have a call scheduled with Link Transit, which is based out of Wenatchee, in 2 weeks, I believe. But Link is a nationwide leader in fleet electrification and inductive charging, so we're really excited about the opportunity to talk with them and learn from them and their journey. So through the focus groups and the interviews that we've done so far, we've collected some, and the survey, we've already collected some really great ideas and direction on the climate action plan, and are thinking of using these upcoming meetings as opportunities to dig into specific topics. Jumping back up to the upper half of the timeline. So what we're developing the goals, strategies, and actions. We will have some kind of the short-term priorities finalized by September 13th. So those are the ones that JTA is looking to include in the upcoming 2025 budget. And the longer term actions will be drafted by mid-October and finalized in early November. We also are thinking about, we're looking at doing some open houses for public engagement. More on that in just a second. And then we will finalize the climate action plan by mid-December. I also wanted to note that I think Nicole gave an update to this group last or 2 months ago about the comprehensive operational analysis. But just wanted to note that we are aware of that effort, and we're trying to explore opportunities where we can combine outreach between our two projects, like hosting a joint open house to ideally increase participation and reduce the number of events that we're asking community members to attend. And we're also thinking about how these two efforts can inform one another, just because increasing ridership and having JTA run really efficiently and serve as many people as are willing to ride the bus is an important part of the operations analysis, but also important for climate action. Okay. I'll go through the greenhouse gas emissions summary quickly. As you can see from the graph, there's a pretty large section of JTA's footprint as we've defined it. That comes from the mobile fuels for the revenue fleet vehicles. So this table on the left here has the different categories that we included in the inventory. And just under 89% of it is the fueling for the revenue fleet vehicles. Employee commutes is the next largest category, and the mobile fuels for the non-revenue fleet vehicles comes in after that. Electricity use is a pretty small percentage was a pretty small percentage of JTA's footprint in 2022 because JPUD sources its electricity from BPA, which is I believe largely a hydropower and nuclear profile. So the footprint on that is relatively small compared to other providers like PSE. Okay, in that bottom left corner there, you can see that we've noted that the emissions from JTA's 2022 operations are equivalent to about 0.5% of the county-wide transportation emissions as measured in the 2018 Jefferson County inventory. So something to keep in mind as we consider the balance between JTA's operational emissions versus the impact that can be had by getting more people on the bus. And also wanted to note that in 2022, JTA service led to almost 250 metric tons of avoided emissions. Okay, so now we get to the community survey. Almost done with all of my yapping here, but just wanted today, I'll be sharing the main themes from 2 survey questions. One is about resilience and one is about ridership. And the results will be summarized, the survey results from the full survey will be summarized in the climate action plan, and the full results will be included as an appendix to the plan. One more thing I wanted to note was that we used a variety of outreach methods to get as many responses as we could, which is referred to as convenience sampling in the social science world. So we can't extrapolate the survey results to make claims about the full county's perspective. But that being said, I found it really interesting to see which ideas were repeated most frequently and which ideas were kind of out of the box or more creative that maybe didn't come to people's minds right away. So in this first question here, What ways do you think JTA can prepare for climate change impacts or support the community through events such as flooding, snow events, heat waves, smoke, etc.? I won't read all of them. Some of the ones that came up quite often were alerts or updates about events or just about service disruptions or delays. Increasing access to transit, evacuation support was one that a lot of folks listed. Some other ones thinking about bus shelter upgrades, protect people from the elements, air filtration on buses, or climate control, meaning heating and cooling. Let's see, some folks mentioned coordinating with other agencies on emergency management and emergency preparedness. The idea of resilience hubs was mentioned a few times, whether that was using potentially electric vehicles as like kind of a mobile cooling or heating center, or using JTA locations as conditioned spaces, or just transporting folks to different community centers where people can get out of the heat or out of the cold. See a little bit about incorporating climate resilience into planning and into future projects. Let's see, anything else? One that came up a few times was maintaining service with smaller vehicles for snow days, potentially. And then I'd say keeping roadways clear, whether that's snow or debris from landslides or anything. So from a community perspective, not all of these, I understand that not all of these may be in JTA's purview, but this was, these were kind of the largest themes that came out of this question. And then the second question that I wanted to review was this question about service changes that would make it easier for the Jefferson County community to use transit more often. So the bolded options are the ones where participants were asked to rank on a scale of no impact or minor increase, moderate, major increase, how much these changes would impact ridership. And we kind of pre-populated these based on the long range plan survey and staff input. There wasn't really, the results of the survey aren't representative of the entire county anyway, but there wasn't really a clear winner or a clear loser among these. I think a lot of people thought that they would increase ridership in some way. And then the non-bolded ones are were proposed in a follow-up question when we asked if there was anything else that might make it easier for folks to use transit. So one that came up quite often was the ferry connections, which I know JTA has heard a lot about optimizing those and getting people to Seattle and things like that. Let's see. I think again, like using transit more often, when that comes up a lot is frequency. So folks mentioned like smaller vehicles, carrying fewer people, running on a more frequent schedule. Providing specific services for older folks, like some version of dial a ride, or like some kind of on demand was one that came up a few times. Let's see. Yeah, I think that just about covers it. If you have questions about any of these specifically, I'll do my best to answer those. But just wanted to mention so that we'll take the input from all of these kind of open-ended survey questions and incorporate that into the first draft of the goals, strategies, and actions for the climate action plan. So we'll be working with JTA on those goals, strategies, and actions to figure out what's feasible, what's in JTA's kind of jurisdiction, and continuing to get more input there. And then we'll also be developing a criteria for assessing these actions. So some of those might be like, how much does it reduce greenhouse gas emissions? What's the cost? How much staff time is involved? How do we balance coverage and frequency of service? So that's all I have for you. And I went a little bit over my ambitious 10-minute update there. So apologies again for all my chatting, but now is when I get to ask. Let's see, what do you think is best, Nicole, Kelly, You want to get tag input first or do questions from tag to peak?
Maybe we ask questions and then
Okay,
do some brainstorming. Will you pull their? So we can see if the online people have questions.
yeah.
Any questions about this presentation up in Zoom land?
Yeah.
Yep.
In the greenhouse gas inventory section of your planning,
Mhm.
will you be just looking at Jefferson Transit's greenhouse gas emissions, the in-house ones? And I
That was,
asked in relation to, it seems like this also should include a Jefferson county-wide emissions graph at the same time, somewhere else on this, because in the result of implementing a good plan would be reduction of community-wide emissions and showing that that reduction has resulted, unfortunately, in an increase in Jefferson Transit's, because we now have more service and more riders, and there's an offset in there. And I think it would be helpful to see that offset potential in a graph. That's my suggestion.
yeah, thank you for that. I'll make a note of that. We can depict that graphically. For sure. Were you also talking about like? Never mind, lost my train of thought there.
Okay.
Yeah.
John Fresca, do you have anything you would like to comment on? You're muted.
I'm impressed with what I'm seeing here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I think it's great. I do agree, though, that I would like to see the potential for the community's reduction. I don't think people understand. You don't have to get very many people on the bus
To make a difference.
to make a huge difference.
Now, this notion the bus has to be full is
Malarkey,
Yeah.
yes.
And I think what will be interesting moving forward, so in 2022, we did not have an electric bus. And thinking that our electric, with the mindset that our electric bus will be on the road and in operating in service, and we have 2 more scheduled to come our way. I think it's going to be really interesting in the few years to come to see, okay, so if we do add service, maybe our percentage is increasing, but the county is possibly decreasing, or even if we increase a bit, and we don't see a huge change in the county, at least, more service means more people riding, in theory riding. And I think it'll be interesting to have some of these kind of conversations. And transit staff has been really talking with Peak about, okay, how, making sure that this plan isn't just going to sit on the shelf, but that Jefferson Transit staff who don't have science backgrounds can take the data and it's organized in such a way where we can kind of fill in, and then these calculations will pop out so that we can do our own kind of assessments with that. And I think it'll be really interesting once we're adding more electric vehicles, and we're, in theory, going to be adding more service, what that looks like. And I also think it's interesting that employee commutes was a larger portion of ours, and it's not a big portion. But it's interesting that I'm not sure that is necessarily going to go down too much, just based on the idea that our employees fire up transit and then we shut down transit. So most of our employees don't have the opportunity to take the bus to or from work. So
And we have a significant portion that live out of county.
yeah.
And so,
So yes,
there's a housing because of the
Issue.
role in the county, so.
Can you guys take over the housing problem too while you're at it?
So to add to what Scott said, there is, I think, some value in maybe looking at those kind of side by side, and I'll let Kat mull over that idea, because I'm not sure what that looks like, but we might be onto something there.
Good. I just have, go ahead, Scott.
Well, I wasn't quite done with my comments, so just let me, but
Go ahead.
it's good to hear everyone else weigh in, though. If the emissions reduction strategy includes the big one, which will, I know I'll bore all of you except Kat with this, that we must stop subsidizing driving with excessive and free parking mandates everywhere. Now, as we know, the city removed the mandate for parking off-street parking requirements. The county has not, so they're still continuing to support the car for everyone's trips instead of, well, not instead of. So and the reason that needs to be a strategy here is because the Jefferson Transit Authority Board is made up of the city and the county, and now some other representatives. Thank you, John. So that's my comment, Kat. That's what I'd like to see.
Got it.
I would just like to ask, I'm puzzled by the use of in the community survey, there's incentivized bike use and incentivized transit use. How do we incentivize a service that is already zero fare? I don't know what the members of the community that added that is in their survey. I don't know how we incentivize something that's already zero fare. Any ideas?
Yeah, I think I was gonna say, what I remember from the survey, there was someone who said maybe a punch card for the number of times you use the bus. Again, we can like the feasibility of these things is like, it's one thing to write it on a survey and then another thing to implement. As just from what I know of Whatcom County's Smart Trips program, I know that enrolling in that program, you get a little card that local businesses offer, like say like a 10% discount on certain products or things like that. So that I don't know exactly under what structure Smart Trips is like set up or who's running that, but that's another just like personal example.
One of the problems is that we don't collect fares, so that would require the bus driver to start interacting individually with every rider that wants to interact, and that changes your scheduling and everything else. So I don't know how that's going to work here, but I was just curious as to whether the public had any ideas about how you incentivize something that's already zero fare.
No, there in terms of solid, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, proposed ideas there were not.
I think
Not many.
Scott is right. We need to deal with parking, but transit doesn't get to do that. So I'm not sure how we incentivize paid parking when
Debbie, the Transit Authority Board is made up of 2 council members, city council members, and
Yes.
3 county commissioners, all 3 county commissioners. That's where the power lies to get transit more riders and transit actually addressing climate emissions for the county, for the community. Otherwise, I don't see a whole lot of value in this. You know, we can reduce our emissions at Jefferson Transit by a fraction of a percent, but we as Jefferson Transit, I'm saying we can reduce community-wide emissions tremendously when you consider that 66% of all greenhouse gas emissions in Jefferson County come from our transportation system. So there's a huge opportunity for taking a slice out of that, as someone from Bellingham would know, considering how well they've done up there.
yes. Okay, go ahead.
I had another comment about, I mean, in terms of thinking about transit ridership, one of the ideas about, it's often incentives, but sometimes another way to think about it is lowering barriers to taking transit. And one of the lowering barriers to take transit is something you brought up, Deb, earlier in the comment, where these high school students want to go to Bishop Park. And so I just did a sample here of using Apple Maps. And I said, how would I get from here to Haynes Place right now? And letting people know that standard third-party navigation apps like Apple Maps and Google Maps and other things that are free on their phone, you know, it tells me immediately, I can get from here to Haynes Place. The bus is scheduled at 5:58. It's a 19-minute ride. And I can have it just hit go and it'll talk me through that. So in our pockets, all of us, probably right now, all of us who have these smartphones, have their own transit concierge at their fingertips. So being able to get that word out, which is everybody pretty much has access to this.
Yeah.
So we don't have to create something on a website or incentivize everything. Or, you know, there are other incentives we can offer, but people have this powerful tool in their pocket right now. And if we're trying to get people to take this service, that might be something to kind of, as you're thinking about changing the website or making other changes, is making that advertisement so that everyone who lives in Jefferson County knows how to use
Well,
this.
it sounds like that's something that might be in the climate action plan as well. That's where that belongs.
That's what I'm saying.
We're at
is
the cat priorities now, and that's definitely use the tools you have available.
Yes, and that's part of lowering the barriers to taking transit. So,
Yeah.
so looking at the page where it's the question, if you had to pick top 3 things JTA should focus on, one could be increasing awareness of the tools you have in your pocket today, using your smartphone without you having to pay for additional, you know, any kind of additional app, or to have somebody talk you through transit. It would be a great opportunity for, as we think about our schools and their involvement within the board, is letting students know how to use that to take transit in their own lives. And hopefully that's a lifelong habit they could begin.
Thank you. That's great. Does that help, Kat?
Yeah,
Something you'd like-
absolutely. Thank
something
you.
with- Okay, good. You have anybody else on the previous page before we move on to the priorities? I assume you want folks to answer those questions?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Okay. if
That
you-
was-
Go ahead.
I was gonna
Anybody?
say, yeah, we see the tag as being a really important stakeholder group and advisory group to JTA, so would really love to hear. I know some, like Scott, for example, you've talked about parking, as I'm assuming that's one of your top 3. But
I have that under the second question, but
okay.
let's start with the first question.
The questions do overlap a little bit,
Yeah.
I will admit.
Okay, who would like to speak to the first question if you had to pick the top 3 things that JTA could focus on? Parking?
Well, parking is part of an incentive to get people to get on the bus, but I think that it's something you guys are already working on, which is increasing in frequency and just every time, you know, I've tabled a number of times and for transit and it's not convenient. It's not convenient. And then, I don't know, maybe, I try to help my retired friends say, well, you know, 10 more minutes, but
Yeah.
in any case.
Plan better.
Yeah, I would just say what you're doing,
Keep doing it.
keep doing it, increase the frequency and make it more convenient.
Anybody want to, up on the screen, want to address this question? If you had to pick the top 3 things JTA could focus on to increase ridership, what would they be? I think Scott's already said paid parking. You're muted, Scott.
I would put parking as the top 3. We're not going to address anything else until we stop incentivizing driving. People say transit's not convenient, as Becky says. Well,
Right.
it's because driving is more convenient because you have free parking at both ends of all your trips. In fact,
Right.
look at your own staff, Nicole. The location of the transit center is such that they have to drive there.
That's not going to change though.
No.
No, that's
Some
not
of-
gonna change because it's already built into the system.
But some of it is where they live.
Yeah.
So if they're not on a bus route, like for me, for example, I would like to take the bus to work, but I don't live on a bus route. And I live on a road that doesn't have a shoulder. So it makes it hard to
To get to a bus.
to get to a bus. And I think about myself when I'm thinking about the public and how do we remove that barrier? So I think much to what you're saying is how do we start removing some barriers for people to consider public
Right.
transportation?
I would like to point out my three, if I could, Anna Zebert's book that from the transportation meeting that we had, features that make people feel safe, like exactly what you're talking about, shelters, places to sit down, lighting where possible, so that people feel safe getting to the bus stop to get on the bus. I think we need a lot of that. I would like to point out that we're number one in the state of cities under 50,000. That is, people for bikes. We are number one. We're 33rd in the state in the nation, but we're number one in the state for use of for people for bikes is the name of the website, right? So I would like to see us promote that and you know get bicycle riders to be on the bus. I know I've heard from a lot of people that, well, you can only put the bicycles up in front, and what if there's a group of 4 and somebody's already got up there and I get left because there's no place for me to put my bicycle. So I know that you're looking at more opportunity for putting bicycles inside the bus, I believe.
We've been doing that for more than 10 years.
Say again, please.
I said
There,
that has been in the idea hopper for more than 10 years.
Yeah.
so keep in mind though, if we were to put in a place that would specifically hold bikes, we would lose 6 to 8.
I'm thinking hanging from the ceiling like Link does, no?
Link does that on the light rail, but not on the buses. So some agencies that have articulated buses will have places where you can hold the bikes in the articulated part.
But not us.
But no, we're
not
we've
articulated.
talked about going smaller, not
Bigger.
bigger. But so having a place, a designated place for bikes inside a vehicle. We really do have to consider how much seating we're going to lose for people. Right now, if we don't have folks using the wheelchair securements, we can fold up those seats and then secure the bikes that way. But hanging from the roof of the vehicle is that's not something that us or our insurance pool is looking at doing because they become projectiles if you're involved in a serious collision. But we will be looking at, staff is currently looking at updating our bike policy. So at the next board meeting, hopefully we will have an updated bike policy.
My number 3 on that one is encourage paid parking, by the way.
I want to back up just a second and just comment on what Nicole just said. We've got buses that run around with 2 or 3 people on them. So displacing a couple more people's seating for bikes is not going to affect our ridership negatively. I don't see that happening. And anyway, you and I, Nicole, can discuss this elsewhere.
Anything else on the first question? Okay, let's move on to go ahead.
I do have 3. Just real quickly, we discussed awareness of mapping tools for transit
Yes.
already,
That's
so
great.
that's covered that. I'd like to look at increased frequency, maybe instead of 30 minutes, 20 minutes, not a huge leap, not every 5 minutes, but a small, it's easy, a lot easier to wait 20 minutes.
This is for the city.
This is, for, not on all routes necessarily, but where we can and in more town oriented areas. And the last one would be scripting car-free experiences with partners. So instead of we've talked a lot about the parking element, giving transit riders an idea of how you could, go for a walk, and then in the middle of the walk, get on a bus. At the end of the walk, get off the bus, continue your trail ride, or maybe you have a bicycle that's not an electric bike. You ride your bike for part of the time, you don't want to go up the hill. You go to Haynes Place and you take the bus up the hill. So helping riders understand what it would take to do a car-free trip. And in some cases, it could even, and this is something Nicole and I have been talking about with Main Street, would be thinking about how for example, people coming over on the ferry could get on, could take the ferry over from Seattle, take the Kingston route, get into town, and maybe they're staying someplace that's not on a transit route. Okay, there are zero emission vehicles that you can rent. You could rent an electric bike. There's a partnership. So it doesn't have to be focused on one particular mode. Transit is one of many modes in town. It may not get everybody exactly where they need to go, but understanding that there's more than one car-free mode out there that could really get to some of our climate change objectives.
It can combine those modes.
Right, and you hop from mode to mode to mode.
And how do we promote this? Is this advertising? Is this brochures? Is this, how do we do this?
I think that's partly something that could come on the RISE website, is helping understand how things like trails and transit integrate, how ferries and transit integrate. But it might be something to explore. Just again, in terms of lowering barriers, that you've got an opportunity to think about zero emissions in a different kind of way, where transit is a piece of the puzzle, but not necessarily all the puzzle, because transit doesn't go as the whole point to every part of the town.
I think that's a really great idea.
I do too.
Nicole is on every committee.
That you can imagine.
Where she sleeps, but we're on
Sleeps?
I know. How can you? We're on a couple of committees together, and one of them is the Active Transportation Stakeholders Group. And I think that figuring out how to get the other people who have power, the county and the city, to help us with something like that, to promote it. I mean, the city should be promoting this, and also help us get it out into the community. Like, we have a walking times map that was made, how many years ago? 15 years? A bunch of years ago. So, another map, maybe digital map, about how much time it takes to get from here to there. And you can walk this, or you can take your bike here. I think that's a really good idea, but enlisting the other big powerful folks in the county is a good idea.
Well, and listing partners too, because you have bike shops that rent, regular bikes or electric bikes.
Broken spoke.
Right, exactly. So there's the potential for partnerships in there, that where there's something in it for Jefferson Transit, but along with something being in it for other groups too, and it promotes economic development. So maybe it's something that, it has climate change, positive impacts for climate change, and some economic development.
Well, all those things overlap.
You get that,
It's all multi-solving. Yeah.
Anything else on that first question then, or should we move on to the next question? What are one or two climate action priorities that you would like to see JT address? Excuse me, have we already pretty much beaten that one to death?
Debbie, I want to go back to the first one for just a second and piggyback on a comment someone made. We have this great trail system in town. I'm not sure how it came about, but it seems that if people understood that they could catch a bus to the far side of Cappy's over in Bell Street neighborhood, and then walk back to home, they could get a great walk in without having to do, out and back. Something.
Again, that's educating the public and advertising, and so we have to.
Yeah, take the bus to the intersection of 49th and Hendricks, and walk through Cappy's all the way to back to town, back to Blue Heron.
Or take it from the fairgrounds out to North Beach, do a loop there and take it back. So yeah, exactly. Being able to have that car-free experience on multiple modes, but either way, you're promoting climate change. And it's partly education, yet it's also
all education.
It's also
people
signage.
Don't know.
It's also signage. Being able to, instead of just being able to say public trailhead, closest transit stop X number of miles that way.
Yeah.
So you have an opportunity to sign things too, and use that powerful tool in your pocket.
Yep, that's good. Okay, now are we done with that question?
Yes.
Okay. to the second question, does anyone have anything they would like to add? What are one or two climate action priorities you would like to see JTA address in the climate action plan? Anybody? Anything further? Go
I
ahead.
have a small one. One would be infrastructure vulnerability. So that would be things like over the next 20 to 25 years, what potential roads are likely to be either closed more often or potentially flooded at a low level on a more regular
Like Water
basis. Like Water Street, for example. If Water Street is not able to be a transit route anymore because it's unpredictable during every high tide, how does that affect transit operation? Are there any kind of other routes or other locations where flooding or other extreme weather events could be an ongoing vulnerability for transit services?
I like that. I would like to contribute something. We talked about this back in motorized board days. It used to be the RCW said about parking fees could only be used to increase parking facilities.
No.
I just looked at-
Nope. Parking meter fees.
Yeah, I'm sorry,
Meter.
parking meter fees could only be used to increase parking facilities. I just went on on the city's, the state's, recreation code for Washington, and they're updating the website, and it looks like that has gone away. And if we can get the city to, put in parking, cost, it would seem that maybe we could increase, use city money to collaborate with transit to run a more frequent shuttle, that you get some support from parking fees. So that is, I can't find that in the RCWs anymore, Scott, so I think they have changed that.
Well, it always was just relative to metering.
Right.
And so
But
if you
that's
use,
not even in there anymore.
so if you use kiosks, it was an
Yeah,
issue.
but the meters aren't even in the RCWs anymore that I can find, so this would
Right.
seem like a very good collaboration if we could get paid parking in town and work out a collaboration with transit to have more frequent service without it coming out of your pocket all the time. I think that's another idea.
No, I was just gonna, I think speak out of turn. I think Steve King told me a couple of years ago when I was asking about paid parking funds going to transit. He said, well, if we had a TBD, we could do that. Well, we have a TBD.
We have a TBD.
now. So,
With Transportation Benefit District was passed,
so I'm
Right,
not
that's
sure
true.
how that works, but I think he said that
but
anyway.
that's separate from parking fees and.
No, that's separate.
Additional parking.
But no, I
yeah.
think somehow it can be incorporated,
Yeah.
the fees, but I don't know.
But-
And the course staff would.
Anything else on this one? No, okay.
I do just want to make sure that Miranda gets to give her dynamite presentation.
Okay.
Yes.
She's already going to have to shorten it.
Okay, I can't see John in there to see if he has his hand raised, but,
John left.
no,
John Kraft.
John Frasca.
John, okay.
Are you good with this, John Frasca?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Then let's move on to the dynamite.
So Kat, thank you
And
so
thank
much
you.
for
Yeah.
coming.
Yes, thank you. It
Yeah,
was,
happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Fascinating.
Miranda, sorry you have to shorten your
no,
presentation.
we're really excited about all this, so thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you all again for your input. It was great to be here. Have a good rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, Transit 101? Is that where we are?
You guys ready?
Well,
Okay, so we
let's
just
do
went
it.
from a super exciting topic to probably the most boring topic that ever happens at a board meeting, and that's finances. But think about some of the comments that you made during your climate action when you look at the cost model. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen
Okay.
here.
It's page 32 in the packet if anybody is using their packet.
But I have a PowerPoint. at
Of
me.
course you do. But I made all my notes on my packet, so.
Making sure that you guys can.
Yeah, I won't move us.
Okay, so let me go here. So this is just this presentation covers the Jefferson Transit cost allocation method. This is what we use to determine costs of service when we're implementing new services. And this is also what we submit to the state for our grants. So this is how we show how we allocate all of our operating expenses across our two operating projects, which is east and west ends of the county. So we continue to use the same cost allocation method that we've used since 2008 to determine the appropriate allocation of operating expenses. We use a 2 variable fully allocated cost model consistent with the model published by the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials, or AASHTO, in the Comprehensive Financial Management Guidelines for Rural and Small Urban Public Transportation Providers. The principle underlying a 2 variable fully allocated cost model is that the total cost incurred in delivering the specific service is attributed to that service. So the fully allocated cost of a specific service includes both the direct costs of labor, material, and resources used exclusively in the delivery of that service, and a portion of the shared costs in the administrative labor, support services, and material resources. So direct and indirect costs are part of this model. So a 2 variable fully allocated cost model recognizes that both operating variable and fixed costs contribute to the delivery of Jefferson Transit services. So a fully allocated cost represents a complete allocation of labor, services, and materials used in the delivery of transit service. This does not mean that we only count when the driver is behind the wheel of a bus, driving the bus, the gas that goes into it. This means that, so it's not just the labor of that driver, it's the labor of the driver, it's the labor of the dispatcher, it's the labor of the supervisor, Nicole being here, maintenance, the parts that go into preventative maintenance, reparative maintenance, the customer service support. It's all of these things that funnel down into keeping that bus on the road. So the costs associated with the delivery are the variable costs. That includes driver wages, vehicle fuel. These are the direct costs that are identified as either revenue miles or revenue hours of service. So for example, the variable cost or incremental unit for each Brennan run in the following, in the cost model shows $495. $11, which remains constant with the addition or reduction of service. Fixed costs, which tend to be constant, example of these include administrative labor costs, facility related costs, and materials and supplies. Those costs are incurred directly to support revenue service. Fixed costs are also overhead costs not previously allocated to revenue miles or revenue hours of service. The fixed cost for each of the following, so Brennan, for example, in the cost model, if you're looking at it, is $113.03. So you have the variable costs in that run, and then you have the fixed costs in that run, and that contribute to the total costs of a single run. So if additional Brennan runs were to be added to the schedule, the fixed cost would decrease with each new run.
We don't have, did we include the cost model?
It's in the packet.
Oh, okay.
So I'm just kind of going over what individual
I'm
sections
assuming
are. That's it.
That's,
Yeah, and I'm gonna break it down a little bit further.
that's
Yeah.
page 32.
Yeah, we'll get into it. So for the financial data and adjustments, what goes into this cost model? I'll try and keep it real brief here. So our cost model consists of 4 major sections. This includes the descriptive statistics. This is actual revenue miles, hours, route frequency, passenger counts. This data is provided on Fixture.Route, Dial-A-Ride, and Vanpol. Financial data. This is the source of actual gross expenses on a monthly basis. This is all of our expenses that we pay throughout the month. This gets fed into this cost model. So all of our vendors, fuel, payroll, everything. the detailed cost is used to allocate expenses across the fixed route, dial-a-ride and van pool categories. This is how we allocate, so we categorize expenses based on service and the type of expense that it is. And then our cost allocation results, this is what's used to bring all that information together. You have fully allocated costs that are present for all the fixed route, service, dial-a-ride and van pool. And those costs are segmented into revenue miles, revenue hours, total costs, and per route costs, as well as per passenger costs. Also presented are the incremental costs associated with each fixed route service, dial-a-ride and van pool. And the cost allocation results may also reflect adjusted expenses. These are the things that are ineligible expenses that are not grant reimbursable. Our operating grant, this may be like with our insurance company, it may be something that's reimbursable through them, so we have to remove that cost out of our grant. Union labor, legal fees for union labor, that is not reimbursable. So there are certain costs that don't get reimbursed by the grant, and that's removed during the allocation. That's when we bill the grant. When we're actually doing the total service cost model, all that stuff is included. So when we're looking at the cost allocation results, the end goal of this 2 variable cost model is to determine the cost per revenue mile and revenue hour. So using these 2 components provides far greater accuracy than one variable. So if we kind of go back to what I was talking about before, you can see can you see? Let's see, is this, what is it pointing? There it is. Okay, so for example, you see in the Brennan here, this is for the revenue miles, the total cost is $104.30 per run. It's one run. And then for the revenue hours, you have 364.29. Sorry, it's tiny on my screen. And then we have the total variable cost, that's $468.49, and the fixed costs. So for one run cycle, and for Brennan, I think it's there and back. That's how it's calculated.
Okay.
So it is $586.79 per run. And so when we are calculating what it's going to cost Jefferson Transit to add one more Brennan run, that would be the cost. So if we look at dial-a-ride, it's very expensive per trip, considering productivity for that. And productivity is how many people are we moving per trip. It's usually between 1 to 1.5 in Jefferson County. In a urban setting, you might see that productivity number be 3 to 4. So while we shoot for 3, 1.5 is probably the best our rural county is going to do. I'm getting there, Nicole. So operating expenses examples using this cost model. So to determine the daily, weekly, and monthly annual cost of service, the number of route cycles is multiplied by the total cost per run. This calculation breaks down into the variable and fixed costs assessed per cycle. Typically, one shuttle run. Variable costs fluctuate with the number of runs. We kind of alluded to that. So I'm just going to I'm going to switch over here and just give you an example. So we're going to look at what 2 variable fully allocated cost unit, how it's calculated. So for one Castle Hill, we have 98.45. So we have the 1.439 there times the mileage of that route, and then you have the 204.18 times the hours of that route. So it shows how operating expenses are broken down to the unit cost of every revenue mile and revenue hour of service for fixed route. And dial-a-ride and van pool, but this one's for fixed route. And then Vanpol only has direct costs actually, so it technically is a one variable. But those are allocated since the service, it doesn't directly impact operating, because those aren't our employees.
Right.
Your
vehicles, but not your employees.
Exactly. So it doesn't significantly impact the operating overhead costs. So when we're looking at how, and it, mind you, the calculations that go into this, these are big spreadsheets. I'm really trying to consolidate these things down for you. And if you're just wanting the end results, it's perfectly fine. But I just knowing that how all this is put together is I think pretty interesting. So, you know, how does this help us when we're planning for service and we're also reporting? So it provides us meaningful tools for our state and auditor reporting as well. So to WashDOT, to the state auditor, and then informed decisions. So it facilitates decisions on service adjustments. So when we get requests from the public, how do we know what it is?
Cost.
How do we know what it's gonna cost to add something like a bring and run? You know, what's it cost to go to the coil and back? And then the comprehensive cost analysis ensures that all of our labor, services, and materials are accounted for in the cost model. So that is my.
Do you know how, can you put up the cost model?
Maybe that we all have.
Yeah, and maybe just walk through, like, I think it's interesting once we really look at yearly, like weekly, monthly, yearly.
Do you want this one?
Yeah, like I think what's interesting is really dialing into like, okay, what does it cost? Like, so we've talked about, let's add more like another Brennan run. So
Right.
we've established like $586.79 to do it one time, additional one time per day.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think looking at, you know, what that would be per year, I think it's just interesting.
So when we're looking at this model, these are based off so this portion of the cost model is based off of what our current service frequency and what we call patterns, how a route is patterned. So think of one of the early, is it the 7 that does the uptown downtown loop? So the first 7 of the day goes uptown downtown before it leaves.
Acts like a shuttle.
Yeah, so it
Yeah.
acts like a shuttle. That's a pattern, so it adds mileage and hours onto that one specific trip. So that's also
Not
included.
all trips are equal.
Yeah, not all trips are equal. So like, and some Brennan, some go to Black Point, some go to Triton Cove. So that changes the miles and hours on those trips too. Even though it's the same run, the pattern of that run is different. So that is also taken into account and kind of broken out on those ones that's kind of averaged. So it is for the Brennan, I think we just typically go the longest. What's the longest? Because then it's always gonna be slightly cheaper, right? So
Better to overestimate
yes,
than underestimate.
exactly. You have a little bit of flexibility in your budget, then that's what you get. But so the annual cost of running the Brennan based on the number of trips and the frequency we have right now is $671,000 a year. So if we want to add, you know, 2 a day, that's going to be about $5,000. So if we want to add a morning Brennan and an evening Brennan, that's about $5,000 a weekday.
Ouch.
So I think it's just interesting when we're really thinking about where do we add and how will.
Sorry, just to clarify, a week, not a day, a week.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. It came out a little weird, like,
Well,
no,
we really start thinking about, well, where should we be adding and
And how much is it?
what
gonna
can
cost?
we absorb? And you know, this isn't me saying we shouldn't, you know, like, no, we shouldn't do this or we shouldn't add frequency. I just
We
think
just need to know.
having the numbers in your head, like, and I also think what's really interesting is dial-a-ride. If we're looking at dial-a-ride, that cost is gonna be similar to on-demand. So it, just keeping in our minds, it's always going to be more cost effective to run. Almost always to run a fixed route during high frequency areas.
Yeah, because you can see that the shuttle costs us $580,000 a year. Dial-A-Ride for the service area in the county costs 1.1 million.
Do the feds kick in on Dial-A-Ride? I thought that was a.
Well, okay, so when it's federally funded, it
Uh-huh.
means FTA funds WashDOT and we get pass-through grants for our consolidated operating.
And that's where our Dial-A-Ride
Federally
comes from,
funded,
but that's where
yes.
Dial-A-Ride comes from, okay.
Well, all of our operating comes from, we are required to put Dial-A-Ride, ADA, complimentary, I hate complimentary as a word, comparable ADA paratransit service to our fixed route,
Right.
if it meets a certain
Within
criteria.
3/4 of a mile.
Yes,
Yeah.
so if there's certain criteria, characteristics of the route, it could be excluded, like Keystone Express, because it's an express route, has limited number of stops. That does not require comparable ADA services on that route. So it really, it's a phrase that's used, it's not funded directly by FTA.
Okay.
It's passed through, but it's required, so.
Is there any kind of information anywhere that shows a breakdown by route or by Dial-A-Ride type of services? What funding sources? Assuming, is it all grants or?
No, it's 25-75, so
Okay.
it's a 75% match of local funds. So when at the end of the quarter, when we have all of our quarterly expenses, we bill WashDOT with our quarterly expenses, 25% of that they reimburse us for.
Great.
And then the other 75 is gonna be our local match. We also have subsidized, so it's I don't know what percentage of it is. It's about $12,000 a year that we get subsidized from Clallam Transit to operate this JTOC service out of Forks down to Amanda Park. So because technically Forks is in their county, because we are running that service, they subsidize that.
I think also about, like Linda and I have been having a lot of discussions lately, so. She's gonna be ready to stop all these conversations with Nicole, but when I keep saying when Jefferson County does well. So when the businesses are doing well, we do well, and that's because
The rising
sales
tide.
tax, yeah.
I would, if I could, okay, Scott's got his hand up. I will wait my turn. Go ahead, Scott.
Thank you. Miranda, an incredible amount of work and what a great spreadsheet to have. The piece that I think would be very valuable, maybe you've done this, is to add a column for the cost per rider to those routes. What,
Yeah, I could definitely do
and I know that's variable, but it'd be
That's
good to know,
perfect. Yeah.
are we paying $300 for every rider who gets on the transit from Black Point to Port Townsend? It'd be cheaper to send a taxi. Just that information would be really valuable to see what routes are costing us the most per passenger and which ones are actually helping us break even or go in the black.
So I think that's something that when we start doing our route, comprehensive, I don't wanna say just route, it's a comprehensive system analysis.
Right.
We're doing the entirety of Jefferson Transit's operations. That would be like a good KPI for us to start evaluating and seeing, where, how we are measuring efficiency on certain things. I will say that because of our rural characteristics, and I've tried to promote this a little bit. We don't use ridership as a performance metric on certain routes, especially when it's rural. I know that the goal of the tag, and this is probably just like the gold tag, I know it's to increase ridership, but
That's our mission.
thinking
statement.
about rural public transit service, sometimes it's more about lifelines to communities, and if you remove
Mhm.
that lifeline, you're removing the only form of transport. So if you think about our JTalk service, there is no other bus service out there. There's it's 128-mile round trip loop for people to get to doctor's appointments or reach connections to get out of that part of the county.
I understand that, but I think it'd be really valuable in the bigger picture for everybody involved in transit planning to see what these routes cost per passenger. Because it may be cheaper to do a dial-a-ride rather than a fixed route. I don't know. We would know with that information though, so.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, Scott. I just don't want you to go in with the expectation that if it's cost the most, that's getting cut the first, because it's not gonna be.
It's not how it works.
Like
No.
if we're looking at how do we change things, I just don't want that to be like an idea floating out there, but I understand what you're saying is that comparatively, what's more efficient? Sending a fixed route or maybe a
Oh,
smaller.
it's also very hard to calculate per person when you don't know how many persons are gonna be on any route.
So what we do, the cost model is based on the full 2023 year, so it's not even based on right now, because I don't have the full year, so it's
So we're
always
using
gonna
previous
be
data. Okay.
the
great.
last financial
Right,
year
okay.
that we use to estimate these, so we have all the ridership for 2023, so what Scott is asking is totally feasible.
Okay,
That would also give us an idea of where to really promote.
I would like to ask a quick question. You talked about not having to have ADA on the express.
Right, so.
And yet John's gonna ride the express. So
No,
how does
no,
that work?
we're talking about ADA comparable paratransit service.
Oh, okay, you don't
Not-
have to have it
No,
adjacent.
no, all of
Okay.
it is, all of our service needs to be ADA
ADA, okay.
accessible, and what we're talking about.
I just
is-
misunderstood you.
Yeah, we're talking about so the service area for dial-a-ride does not increase where that route goes
Okay.
because of the characteristics of that route.
Okay,
And that may change in the future.
but all our routes are ADA accessible.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you.
We
That's what I wanted to
wouldn't be
know.
able to operate a bus if it wasn't ADA accessible, and if we did, we would have to provide a shadowing
alternative.
vehicle that
Okay.
provides ADA
Good.
service.
That's what I wanted to hear. Thank you
Yeah.
very much. Any questions? Are you
I'm done.
part, you think?
I am, so unless you guys have
Any more questions?
I think we are ready to move into the TDP because Jamie
Yep.
is so.
She's sitting there
excited.
waiting. Okay, then we're gonna move in. Please inform us, Jamie.
Okay, so I am just here to talk to you guys a little bit, and I'll be mindful of everybody's time about our TDP, which stands for Transit Development Plan. And just a brief explanation of what this document is. It is really it's a recap of our prior year service, and then service and capital projects, and then looking forward 5 years, what we plan to do with service and what we plan to do with capital projects. So it's got to be in accordance with WashDOT's got some state transportation goals that we have to work within the boundaries of those, and put out this document to them every year in order to be eligible for grant funding. If we want to, this feeds another planning document called our STIP, our state transportation plans. STIP, there's a lot of acronyms here, but anyways, it feeds another planning document, which then allows us to apply for grant funding for certain projects. So this year is kind of exciting though, because and I will see if I can share my screen here, and I want to give a huge shout out to Kelly and all the amazing work that she has done. We have done a complete refresh of our TDP, and like Debbie, I know you always read it very thoroughly, and I always appreciate your catching any little errors I have made with spelling or punctuation. This year is going to have a completely different look, and Kelly has done a ton of work refreshing this plan for us, and there we go. I think I got it up there.
Great.
Can everybody see it?
Yes.
Okay, and I don't know if you can see like my little video thing on here too. I'm not sure how to like make this all go away, but anyways. So it has a completely new look this year. We have listed in our table of contents any like all of the required elements that WashDOT needs to see. And then really it is just, it's a recap, like I said, of last year's service and capital projects, and then our planning moving forward. And then of course our financial plan, which Miranda works tirelessly on. And yeah, I'm not sure if people have questions. There is a copy of this in your packet if you want to look it over. If you've got comments or anything like that, we would love to take those into consideration. We presented it at the board meeting last month. We'll have our public hearing on it this month, and then hopefully full adoption next month. But yeah, I just wanted to talk a little bit about what it was, and show you guys our new updated, and I want to leave this graphic here because I think it's adorable. Talk about our new TDP and show it to you guys.
So I just want to reiterate what Jamie was saying is, this document is not, this is made for WashDOT. This is made to inform WashDOT of our capital improvement plans moving forward. And they take these figures that we present to them and they use that in their capital budget planning to determine how much capital and grant funding is going to be needed to be allocated as we move forward. So all of the TDPs across the state, all the other transportation providers, everyone who gets money out of this bucket or formula funds that fall into these different buckets, they use this information to estimate what the required grant funding moving forward is. So this is kind of like our wish list. It gets updated every year. You know, at one point we had going into the future, all internal combustion engine buses being purchased, and then the board said we're moving electric. So that next year we had no ICE vehicles on our TDP plan. So it changes depending on the
Circumstances.
yeah, so year to year, you might see some fluctuations between our capital improvement on the, so when you're reviewing it, if you're trying, it's gonna be impossible for you to compare this one because we tore it apart and rebuilt it from the ground up.
I think it's a really beautiful document.
It is.
Thank you,
Honestly.
Kelly.
Yeah,
It is.
So then I would just reiterating that this is our wish list, and the reserve amount that we have for our capital is when we do our financial projections. I just want you to think about when you're looking at that timeline for committed capital funds, that it is an expectation that we may get grant funding for it up to 80% for capital. But it's not a guarantee. So we may be using local funds to fund some of these projects, but this is basically saying, please WashDOT, give us money. So
Okay, I just know we're already way over our time. Any questions on this for Jamie or anybody?
If anyone has comments, like if you have a chance to read it and you have some comments, feel free to we in here list how you can you know, provide those comments to us. Feel free to email Kelly.
come to our public hearing.
You can come to our public hearing
Yeah.
and give thoughts and opinions.
Mhm.
And really, if you're like, ooh, this paragraph doesn't make sense, or you know, you've found a typo, or ooh, maybe you should expand on this. We're looking for all of it. So
Okay.
feel
Okay.
free
No, I think
to
it's a great.
give us an email, Kelly, please.
Is there a deadline?
The public hearing is on July 16th. That's when we'll close
Written public comment closes on July 10th, so they can get in the packet for the meetings.
Okay.
And then you can come to the meeting if you missed that due date and
Give a
give
public
it in
comment. Submit.
person or virtually online.
Okay.
And then it'll close, the public comment period will close. Staff will work on updating the plan with all comments.
Okay.
Or we'll evaluate comments and what needs to be included will be included. And then again, we put it before the board in August.
Great. Thank you very much.
I think we can skip the ridership report.
It's on page 44. You can read it yourself.
Real quick, Scott's added
Oh,
agenda
right.
item. Can we move that to
Oh,
the
yeah.
next tag?
Can we
meeting?
move that to the next meeting, Scott?
It'll take me 10 seconds just to put this in your head.
Go for it.
Okay, go.
Jefferson Transit owns some pretty good property, and I was just thinking that we could potentially use Jefferson Transit's property for additional housing. Just think about that. Housing could be built above some of the park and rides. That's all.
And still have parking.
Okay, thank you. And still have parking underneath. Okay, that's his comment. Agenda planning. Send your agenda ideas to Kelly, please, so that we don't stay here forever. Public comment. Do we have any public that wants to comment? No? Okay. We have no members of the public and we are all done commenting. I am going to adjourn this meeting of the Transit Advisory Group at 6:48 p.m. Sorry, we are